What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. So much to get to. I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, but I do want to touch on World Cup, start of the Premier League season, and what happened in Leagues Cup. Beginning with the World Cup, though. These quarterfinals, I mean, just nothing between these teams. This is exactly what you want. You couldn't have asked for a better set of games. The least competitive probably was England-Colombia, but that's a game where Colombia took the lead and provided at least a little bit of a scare to England once England came back and took the lead. Now, England felt pretty comfortable, generally speaking, but that was your least competitive because you're talking about, France and Australia goes to penalties, Netherlands, Spain goes to extra time, and Japan easily could have had a second goal, probably could have had two more in that game against Sweden. Those were all pick'em games. You did feel like England was the better team, but ultimately our semifinals, England, Australia, Sweden, Spain. I'm not going to get too deep into these quarterfinal games. Obviously, it's been a few days since some of them happened. I want to make one big point here, though, because obviously part of the storyline here and one of the headlines you're seeing is that we're going to have a new Women's World Cup winner. And obviously, these are not necessarily the teams you associate with making deep runs in the Women's World Cup. Sweden have been there time and time again. But outside of that, England, it's only been in the last, 3 World Cups that they've become a real force. Spain, never been this far before. Australia, also never been this far before. You got 2 new semifinalists. You're going to have a new champion. The easy thing to point to is just the development, how good this is for the sport, the sign of progress, and all that is true. I want to take it one step further, though. Not only are you seeing more teams capable of getting to semifinals, getting to finals, think about what these 4 teams in particular have had to endure to get to this point. England, the road itself, admittedly, has not been all that challenging. You can say they've gotten fortunate with their draws, especially once you got to the knockout stage. That's fair. This is also a team that doesn't have Beth Mead, that doesn't have Fran Kirby, that doesn't have Leah Williamson, that didn't have Kira Walsh for a little while, and now it doesn't have Lauren James. Now, Lauren James, obviously, that was self-inflicted. But they have been able to overcome all of those absences. Australia. Sam Kerr has played fewer than 90 minutes in this entire tournament. Yet here they are. They were facing elimination at one point, and they are still alive at home. Just the excitement keeps increasing and increasing, right? The hype is building as they get closer and closer to actually pulling this off. Sweden. I talked about this when the round of 16 got set. Your reward for being really good in the group stage, you got to face the betting favorite heading into the tournament, followed by the best team, most impressive team in the tournament so far. Sweden managed to get through both of them. And then Spain. Everything they've dealt with federation-wise, the fact that this is not a full-strength Spain team because of the issues with the federation. Alexia Putellas is not playing 60 minutes a game even. She's more of a super sub right now. And it doesn't matter there either. They found a way to get through. You're going to have a hard time convincing me 4 years ago it was possible for these 4 countries or countries in similar situations to overcome something like these teams have had to face to get to a semifinal. These are the kind of things that you think the U.S. can deal with, right? Where you have a slew of injuries and you're still the betting favorite. But this is what happens when you invest, when you build an infrastructure, and when you take this seriously. Now Australia has enough difference makers that Sam Kerr doesn't have to do everything. England has enough quality that missing some pieces isn't the end of the world. Sweden can go face 2 top teams and come out, by thin margins, but come out ahead of both of them. Spain can overcome key absences because of this young group that is getting developed and the talent that is now coming through that country. That is, to me, the other part of the story that needs to get highlighted that I wanted to bring up quickly. It's not just that teams are getting better. It's that we are on a whole nother level when it comes to be the depth, the development, the infrastructure to continue to have, for these countries to continue to have success and to build on what they are doing. Because you can have one set of players or, it goes your way one time and you make a special run. This is about sustainability, continuing to elevate the women's game. So don't lose sight of that part of this story. Yes, we're going to have a new champion. Yes, we have 2 new semifinalists. But we also have 4 countries here who have found a way to navigate extremely difficult circumstances. All of them slightly different. But you have to have the depth, you have to have the infrastructure to be able to do that. In years past, I don't think that's the case. As good as these countries are, now this is the new norm in the women's soccer space, and it's amazing to see. Moving on to the Premier League, 2 things I want to highlight quickly. Manchester City do their job against Burnley. Burnley look good. I came away feeling a little bit more confident, probably. Not worried about that. It's going to be a difficult challenge. I do think they can stay up. Vincent Kompany has to be pleased by what he saw. Arsenal get past Nottingham Forest. There wasn't too much in terms of the front runners for the title to take away from this first set of games. The 2 things I do want to talk about. 1, Sandro Tonali. Newcastle were outstanding against Aston Villa, played him off the field, and Sandro Tonali was a big reason why. Scores a goal, should have gotten an assist on another one that technically he doesn't get credit for because he played the ball into the box and then something happened before the goal went in. Sven Botman got it across to Isak. But he was spectacular. And this is the thing that I don't necessarily understand about the concerns with, can he deal with the physicality of the Premier League? Can he deal with the step up in competition? All that stuff. Newcastle don't need him to be physical. Newcastle don't need him to do the dirty work. He's not N'Golo Kante. He's not Tyler Adams. That's why you have Anthony Gordon and Joe Linton in your team and Miguel Almiron. Those guys are going to put the work in. They're going to track back. They're going to do the defensive stuff. Yes, he's got to do his job defensively, but he doesn't have to be physically imposing in the midfield. What they need him to do is to pick passes and unlock defenses and set some tempo. That's what he does best, and that's the skill that translates. And they brought this up on the broadcast. I couldn't agree more. It doesn't matter where you're playing. That stuff carries over. If you can play those passes and see those passes, you can do it Serie A, Premier League, in the park down the street. Doesn't matter. They're not asking him to be something he's not. What they didn't have last season was this kind of player who can sit there and just rip teams apart and can see those passes, can make life a little bit easier on Bruno Guimaraes, who's, obviously brings some creativity, but isn't exactly a passing wizard, right? He's more of a goal contributor, just getting around the box, making things happen. This is a massive upgrade. I don't think people are talking enough about what this guy can do for this team. Now, it's one game, and maybe I'm overreacting a little bit, which is why I'm not trying to go too far overboard with this. My point is simply, that's all he needs to do. He doesn't have to be the tempo setter, the Andrea Pirlo, and the N'Golo Kante. They just needed somebody else to provide some dynamism in that midfield, and that's what he's giving you. He was unbelievable. You're probably not getting that every week, but it's a massive upgrade for Newcastle, and you saw why in this game. The other thing, quickly on Liverpool-Chelsea, spectacular game. Ends 1-1. Both teams nearly had a second goal that got chopped off for close offsides. Impressed by Chelsea and what Mauricio Pochettino was able to do. They still don't necessarily scare me if I'm Arsenal, if I'm Manchester City, if I'm Manchester United. But they looked exponentially better than last season. There is a plan. They have an idea, they create chances, and once you get Christopher Nkunku in there, they're going to be in business. On the Liverpool side, that's not the configuration that this needs to be. This is why you need to go get that other midfielder to sort this out and not have Cody Gakpo in the midfield, and to have Alexis McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai as your two eights. They were both really good. It's a perfect fit. But you had to have McAllister playing deeper because you don't have the midfielder in yet. It seems like that's going to happen by the end of the window. So I'm reserving some judgment on that. I still really like this Liverpool team. The one hurdle, though, that I kind of just keep disregarding and probably I'm not giving enough attention to, which is why I want to bring it up now. Defensively, it's just not good enough. And a lot of that is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Not exclusively him, but it's this combination of Virgil van Dijk's not the player he once was. Everybody knows Alexander-Arnold's a defensive liability, and I still think a big part of this is the midfield. This whole system has to work together. Once you get the midfield sorted out and everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, that's going to make life easier on the back line as well. Until that stuff happens, you're going to see some of the issues like the ones they had in this game. And that's the kind of thing that prevents you from keeping pace with Manchester City. They come away with a point. It's not the end of the world. I still am going to continue to be optimistic about them figuring this out. But it has been happening for a while now, and you saw it again in this game. It's not like that rebuilt midfield in kind of this transitional form. This isn't going to be the end product, but it didn't exactly fix those problems. They are still there. Jurgen Klopp still needs to address them. Finally, last thing here, I want to mention this quickly. LAFC crash out of Leagues Cup in stunning fashion, up 2-0 against Monterrey. I mean, they were just wrecking people from the minute they entered this competition. Looked like they were going to cruise to another win, have home field advantage throughout the rest of the tournament. The trophy was there for the taking. And then they give up 3 unanswered goals in a 21-minute stretch near the end of the 60th minute to 90th approximately. I think it was 67 to 88 or something like that. And they're out. Here's all I want to say about this. It's not because of this result. These are the kind of things that happen in knockout tournaments that I refuse to put a bunch of stock in. But remember back in April, May time, when there was this conversation going on about, is this the best MLS team ever after they had beaten the Union to get to, CONCACAF Champions League final. They were going to be heavy favorites there. All 5 trophies were up for grabs. You felt like they for sure at least were going to get 1 or 2. Whether that was winning the CONCACAF Champions League, winning Leagues Cup, winning the Supporters Shield, winning MLS Cup, winning the Open Cup, something. And what I have kept saying from the end of last season is that while they are much better equipped to succeed in knockout tournaments, they were not the best team in MLS last season. The metrics will tell you it was the Union. And they should have won the CONCACAF Champions League. And they didn't. And they probably should have won this competition. And they didn't. And they're doing fine in MLS. They're not winning the Supporters Shield. Unless they turn into a juggernaut here, and I just don't see that happening. And yes, part of that is that the CONCACAF Champions League caught up with them, and they had all these games to make up, and I get that. They're still among the favorites to win MLS Cup, absolutely. But this is why you can't put so much stock in one result in one tournament. Because what are we talking about if they had lost that shootout in MLS Cup and if the tiebreaker was points instead of wins? We're talking about 0 trophies. And then, once they get to the CONCACAF Champions League final, nobody's saying anything about this being the best team in MLS history. You got to take the entire context and not just look at the end result. They're brilliant. They're a great team. To me, they are nowhere close to the Diego Rossi, Carlos Vela, and his prime team that torched MLS that season and just happened to not win MLS Cup. This team is better equipped to win trophies. That team didn't have a plan B. That team couldn't handle chaos. This team can. They proved it by winning MLS Cup last season and by navigating the CONCACAF Champions League to get to the final. Doesn't mean they're actually a better team on paper. And maybe they bring in some kind of big name and that changes things. But I wanted to point this out. Because I feel like I've been very consistent on this with how I feel about this team. And now you're looking at a real possibility where they walk away with 0 trophies this season. Now, of course, they could win MLS Cup. It's possible they win the Supporters' Shield. But this is not some juggernaut that is unbeatable. They had 2 continental trophies within their grasp, and they didn't walk away with either of them. It's worth reflecting on that for a moment and realizing that it's not all that shocking in the broader context of how the last, 9-10 months have gone. They were not a class above everybody else last season. They lost Chicho Arango. They've got new pieces coming in. They're great. They're not all-time great. And Monterrey was another reminder of that, as you're now looking at a Inter Miami Philadelphia Union semifinal and a Monterrey Nashville SC final for Leagues Cup. Semifinal, for Leagues Cup. So we'll see how that plays out. Just wanted to get that off my chest about LAFC. Plenty more coming this week with the World Cup final and Leagues Cup final on the horizon next weekend. Really looking forward to all of that. But that is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.